Hi everybody, it's week 11, time for your overview for English 101 College Composition. Here's a snapshot of your course schedule for this week. You have several pages to read in your textbook in Chapter 11. On Wednesday, the final version of your annotated bibliography is due, and on Sunday, the draft of your research project should be submitted so that you can get some peer review next week. Here's what your module looks like, and there are the links to submit your annotated bibliography and your draft and peer review of your research paper. Now, it's very important that you go back, read the instructions for that annotated bibliography one last time. I know you've read it before, maybe even a couple of times, but just double check to make sure that you are doing everything correctly, that you're using the correct format for the citations, you have the correct number of entries, that it looks absolutely perfect before you turn it in so you can get maximum points for that. And then same thing with your draft version of your research paper. So when you click on that first link in the module, you get your to-do list. Once again, there's the Academic Writer Chapter 10, showing you the pages to read, annotated bibliography due Wednesday, draft for your research paper due by the end of the day on Sunday, and thinking ahead, remember your research project mini portfolio is going to be due next week. I wanted to talk very briefly about what you're going to find in this chapter. This is a really important chapter in this textbook. Even if you've been sort of half-assing it up until now, I urge you strongly to set aside some time and look through the sections, because this is the stuff that's really going to apply on a practical level for literally all the writing that you do from this point on in your academic career. So this chapter is strategies for revising, editing, and proofreading your work. Revising literally means to look again, to revision something, and it refers to changes that you make that are more global in scope. So revising oftentimes involves literally, copying and pasting or cutting and pasting different sections of your paper in different locations. So you might realize that your paper needs a little bit of revision in terms of organization, and so moving things around, moving sentences around. So really look at the way each of your paragraphs flows to make sure you have that good transition sentence into the topic of that particular paragraph, and then it just flows logically to reveal the information that you want. Editing, really similar. A lot of people kind of use those terms simultaneously, but it is a little bit different. Editing is thinking about on a smaller, sort of more micro level, so making smaller changes. We're still looking at language organization, but here you might actually be looking at the sentence level. How does that sentence flow? Is the subject very clear? Is the subject typically at the beginning of the sentence? How precise is the verb in that sentence, and so on. Proofreading is what we typically do at the very, very end of a project, right before we're going to turn it in. And the word proofreading comes from even back in the old days of the printing press. And so they would set the type, and then they would print a proof to make sure that everything looked good. Were the letters in the correct order? Had they put in the correct pronunciation? Were the words spelled correctly? They could look at that proof and then determine what changes, go back, rearrange the type, and so on, and then they would be guaranteed to be able to print an error-free newspaper or flyer or whatever it is they were printing. So we still call this proofreading, and that's when you're identifying and correcting errors in grammar, spelling, and punctuation. Now, before you roll your eyes and give a big sigh, remember that you have a really powerful tool that actually uses AI in order to locate and alert you to those. So please take advantage of it. Use the spell check, use the grammar check in Word, and pay attention to when it's alerting you to a spelling error or so on. Don't worry about that when you're still in the drafting stage, but before you turn it in, really go through your paper with that fine-tooth comb. Make sure everything looks shipshape. There's one more thing I wanted to draw your attention to in this chapter, and it's actually not in your assigned reading. So this is actually for those of you that like to do a little bit above and beyond. Starting on page 281, you'll see that your textbook has an example of a hypothetical student who submits an early draft of a research paper. And then after that, the version of the paper where this student goes back and revises it. And the thing I like about this so much is that there are those sort of side notes written in blue which tell you what the student was doing in his revision. And honestly, you can learn a lot from going through, and you don't even have to read the paper, that carefully, but look at those notes along the side to see the sorts of changes and revisions that this student is making in his paper to create the final version. And I really think that will be a valuable exercise. Okay, and that wraps up your week. So remember 2 things to turn in and, kind of a rather large chunk of reading to do. I will be having chat office hours on Monday. That's the 21st between 11 and 12. So if you have a question, just jump on chat and ask that. I can get right back to you. You can also contact me via the inbox on Canvas or the Ask the Instructor discussion forum. So don't hesitate to ask if you have any questions about your annotated bib or your research paper rough draft. All right, have a great week, and I'll talk to you later.